welcome everyone to the Speaker Showcase featuring Bob Mason. I am John Lurquin, the Marketing and Communications Director at Toastmasters International. It is my pleasure to moderate today's live Q&A session. To ask Bob a question, please click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Type in your question and hit send. We will do our best to get to as many questions as possible. It is my pleasure to introduce Bob Mason. Bob has studied motivation for more than 30 years and has developed a model to help team leaders understand their team members' needs and how to create a motivational environment, ultimately making a team more productive, cohesive, and successful. Bob's education session, titled The Art of Not Motivating, is available to watch on demand, and we are honored he is joining us live today. Please welcome Bob Mason. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, John. I'm glad to be here.
So we already have some questions, so let's get ready if you're ready to get going. To kick things off, during your talk, you didn't talk much about safety in psychological needs. Is that also subject to an individual's perception?
Absolutely is, and it's kind of a lengthy discussion just on the safety part. Most workplaces now are fairly safe in a physical realm. Safety also, though, involves a psychological and emotional realm, which has become a really big issue lately. And the best way to deal with that for leaders is to create that, again, motivational environment where everybody feels that they're part of the team and they're all going in the same direction. Frankly, I tell you, you need to not allow discussions of politics and religion in the workplace, because those are the ones that seem to always drive people to that psychologically unsafe area. So it's a matter of creating the environment where everybody feels comfortable, and that means treating each person as an individual, as them. The leader needs to know who they are, who people are on their team.
This next question is about some ways that can help socialize someone onto a team. I mean, if you're maybe perhaps among some coworkers, I imagine some individuals just want to do their job and just go home. Other individuals appear to be a little bit more committed to the work, and there's just something different about those types of, whether they're employees, coworkers, team members. What do you do with those individuals who don't want to be socialized?
Sure. I firmly believe that everybody wants to be socialized, but the way they want to be socialized can be quite different. There are some people who are very outgoing, boisterous kind of people that, want to be around people all the time and very energetic. And there are other people who don't want to be around people all the time, who are quiet and all that. But that doesn't mean that they don't want to be part of that team, that they don't get something from being with a team that is really cohesive. Is probably the most important thing the leader needs to know how to do, is to get to know the people on the team, find out what they like and don't like, and how they like to be approached. I spend a lot of time on this with leaders in workshops, helping them understand how to get to know the people on their team. Because the leader sets the tone for how that socialization is going to work. As you said, some people just want to be left alone, but that doesn't mean they want to be left outside the group. Those people actually want to have the options, so you need to give them those options.
What are some of the benefits that you see in developing that dynamic within a team, giving people options, giving them opportunities to connect and socialize if they want to?
Okay, when the people feel comfortable in the team, when all the team members feel comfortable, the team will be a lot more productive. It'll be more cohesive. And so the benefit of understanding each individual is the ability to put that team together so that everybody is able to to meet their own level of what that socialization need is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit of a skill, but it's not hard because it's just a matter of getting to know the people and setting your team up to where everybody is able to meet that need.
Yeah. I feel that a lot of leaders might imagine that to be a mysterious process on how to gauge, how to motivate certain individuals. How do you do that? How do you learn what motivates one individual compared to another?
Well, again, you can't motivate anybody, but what you do need to understand is those needs that I explained in the education session. Understand where each person is along the lines of those needs. For instance, if someone has a personal catastrophe that has brought them down to those survival needs,
yeah,
understand that. Have a little sympathy. There's a big discussion going on where I live here about paid time off for sick leave. And to me, it's a real misunderstanding of how a team works to even have that discussion. Because when somebody has some sort of disaster happen in their lives, they're not concentrating on the team, but they haven't lost that need either. So it's getting back to understanding the people on your team,
yeah,
and knowing where they are. And when you get to know those people, you'll know when something isn't right. And if they need a little time, what's wrong with giving them a little time? I think that little bit of time off that you may give somebody to deal with some personal catastrophe will reap great benefits later on when they're more dedicated to the team.
mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a really fast story on that. I had back when I was in the Air Force, I had a situation developed that required our team to really kind of burn the midnight oil, as it were. And one of my civilian members, about 9 o'clock at night, and we had kind of gotten to where things were stabilized. And he says, "If you don't mind, I think I'm going to go home." He says, "My daughter's going to be really mad at me." I said, "Why is your daughter going to be mad at you?" And he says, "Because today's her birthday and I promised to be at her birthday party." Wow. But he said it was important to get this done. So he felt that importance to the team and the mission, but I failed to understand, or I didn't catch the signs that there was something else going on as well.
Do you think, what do you think about the impact of COVID-19 currently, the pandemic, and perhaps how much more isolated some people are? How is that impacting our psychological needs? And is there anything different? How do we adjust to that?
I think that's is having a big impact. The technology, like what we're doing right now, is great. It's not the only answer, though. I actually believe that the solution to what's going on now needed to happen last year, where the leader built that cohesive, that high-performing team. That kind of a team is more able to overcome these kinds of issues. But regardless, it's even more important for the team leader to stay in touch, to talk to the team members, to personal one-on-ones, just to see how they're doing, and if there's anything that they can do to help. That goes a long way. It really does. There are scores of examples of CEOs, of executives who have done this kind of thing and saved companies because the employees stayed with them when things got rough. Mm-hmm. The same thing here. It's difficult. It's hard to do. But that's how you keep the team together. And it's been very unfortunate. There are some teams that have been split up where layoffs have happened, or whole teams have fallen apart. That's not an excuse to just forget those people, because you may be able to bring them back.
Here's a related question from Keenan D'Souza. how do we keep putting in the effort to keep ourselves continuously motivated to have great self-esteem?
How do we keep ourselves continually motivated?
Right. And I imagine, especially during times like this, how do we stay positive? How do we stay motivated?
I don't know, but when you find out, let me know. No, it's difficult. I'll be honest with you, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
In regards to what we're talking about with teams, keeping concentrated on the mission of that team and the goals of that team helps. Keeping a positive attitude is very difficult at times, I know, but that's how, that's one of the most important things. Once you let yourself start getting negative,
Mm-hmm.
once you start getting a little bit depressed, it's a very fast downhill slope, very hard to overcome. One of the ways that I recommend that team leaders keep themselves motivated, as you say, is to stay in touch with the team and help keep them going, because it's very hard to be depressed yourself if you've got other people who are not. At least I believe that. Psychologists might disagree with me on that.
No, I think that makes sense. If those around, I mean, we feed off of each other and we learn from each other on how to interpret certain situations, right? And if someone is acting a little bit more negative and then another person, it's hard not to also feel that.
Right.
But I like what you said at the beginning. I don't know, or it's tough, because it doesn't always need to be easy to find your motivation.
Yeah. You know, everything I've said applies to most people. Mm-hmm. Nothing applies to everyone. I understand that.
Here's a question about failure. There's actually quite a few questions about failure, and so I think I might open this up and ask you just generally, how do you interpret failure, and is failure good or bad?
Failure, I call a pothole on the road to success. We all fail at things. There's a saying attributed to multiple people. I don't know who actually first said it, but if you've never failed, it's because you've never tried. So failure is just one of those things that happens. And as a team leader, you have to understand that, and you have to accept that it's going to happen. Because if you're one of those people who cannot accept failure, who believes that even the smallest hiccup is the end of your career or anything like that, your team develops that attitude as well. Then you have no innovation, you have no forward thinking, you have automatons that are just doing exactly what they're told to do. Those kind of teams fail, but they fail big, and it's not a recovery. Right? So you have to accept failure. Now, that doesn't mean you celebrate it. Right? It means that you accept that it's going to happen and you learn from it. That's probably one of the most important things that you can understand about failure is it's a lesson. It's something you learn. And you and your team need to sit down and figure out what happened, how to avoid it happening again, learn from that. Now, when I say accept failure, I don't mean just go out there and just have a good time. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, right. You still have to put some diligence into what you're doing. But if you've worked hard, you've tried, you've done everything right, and it still doesn't work, learn from it and move on.
Here's an interesting question. How often should you fail? It sounds as though a certain rate of failure is a good thing for learning and growing. But how often should that happen?
I don't think there's a metric for that. I would say if you're failing regularly and quite often, then you may be taking this just a bit too far. I don't think you want to develop if there isn't a failure once a week, then we aren't trying hard enough. I don't think that's the way you want to go.
Mhm.
You just want to accept that sometimes it's going to happen.
Here's a question that takes us back to the team dynamic, working within a group. How do you know as a leader that you're making progress with a team member?
How do you know as you're making progress with a team member? It's kind of hard to answer because I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. If you're talking about a one-on-one relationship with a team member, I think it's a good idea. If you're dealing with an issue, a problem with that team member, is to kind of define some goals of where you want to go or where you want them to go. And then that kind of tells you if you're making progress or not. If it's just in general, I always, when I was leading large teams or teams of teams, I always sat down with team leaders, and I had a forum I created, and I asked questions, and some of the questions are like, where do you see yourself? Or, the old where do you see yourself in 5 years, which I know some people hate, but it's actually a really good way for a leader to understand how you can help somebody. Questions like that, what do you like to do? What are your, let's figure out what your skills are and all that. And then as you go through the day-to-day leadership process dealing with the team, you can start judging whether that person is doing the things that they said they wanted to do, and if you're providing them the opportunity to do that. So it really, the answer to that question I think really varies by what it is that what issue you're trying to deal with.
There's another question here about how to gauge that. As a leader, if you're trying to provide that type of environment for your team members, how do you know that you're achieving that? Do you just ask your team members? Do you survey them? Are there certain kinds of questions?
You mean, how do you know if you're creating that motivational environment?
Yes.
You'll know, right? Because you'll walk in the door in the morning and you'll see a team that's productive, that's happy, that works well together, it's cohesive, that doesn't have the problems that HR always has to deal with. You don't have the HR people banging on your door. People aren't mad at each other. You'll know when you created that motivational environment because most of those problems will go away.
Yep.
And you'll be smiling, and that's when you'll know.
Were there any specific events in your life that led you to think in this way, to lead to this kind of thinking that you have?
Yeah. Almost 40 years ago, I was in a leadership training class in the military, and I learned about Abraham Maslow. And I thought this was very interesting stuff. And I started looking at my life in general and realizing that while he had the needs thing real well, this hierarchy that he had where one need had to be satisfied for the next need, like that, it wasn't the way I saw the world. And then I ran into some more people. Herzberg's one of them, if you know who he is. And I began to understand that you needed to put all this together. But there's no one thing. It's just in my own leadership experience through the years, as the teams got larger, the responsibilities got greater, I began to understand how important this was.
Yeah.
And why the yelling and screaming and do this or else form of leadership didn't work very well. And I was very fortunate to have some really good bosses through the years who really demonstrated some of this. So I don't think there's any one event. It's just through the years, I began to understand, and until about 10 years or so ago, I really created this model and tried to put it all together.
Mhm. Here's a question from the audience. How do you deal with a disruptive team member, especially if that member is really affecting the team's motivation and self-esteem?
You fire them. No, that may come to that.
Yep.
One of the most important things you do as a leader when you have the disruptive team member, it's not uncommon, is finding out, first of all, why they are the way they are. There may be a good reason for it. It may be something that is going on that you're not aware of. There may be something in the past that they haven't gotten over. I've run into this more than once, where I walk into an organization new to me, but there's been something an undercurrent going on there that I wasn't aware of that's really hurt morale. So find out why the person is the way they are. Why do they feel that they have to be disruptive? Sometimes it's because they're just cussed people. Mm-hmm. There are those. I understand. I don't live in utopia. And I was being a little flippant at first about firing, but if there's somebody who is disrupting a team and you can't figure out why and you can't get them to stop, I don't care how valuable you may think they are not valuable enough to destroy the entire team. There's no superstar that great that you're willing to sacrifice your entire team for them. So there may come a time when it's time to part company. And it might work out best for everybody. I've seen that happen too.
A question from Candace in the audience. How do you pull yourself back up if there is a significant event, a traumatic event, something happens to you in your life? How do you pick yourself back up from something like that?
You know, that's a good question. It's a difficult one, and there's not a very good answer to it because it kind of varies from person to person. Mm-hmm. But something I've learned through my own experiences, if you're in a leadership position, there's one thing that's very unfair about it, and that is that you don't get the luxury of being down. Mm-hmm. You don't get the luxury of being depressed, at least not around your team. You have to be the voice, the positive voice. Now, that's not to say everything's rainbows and unicorns, right? You have to be honest. You know, this is not good, and here's why, and here's what we need to do about it. But your own personal depression, you have to set that aside. Now, having said that, one of the most important things a leader can do is get in a peer group. People who are in similar situations, people who you trust, because you do need to share this with somebody. Right? Now, my wife has always been really good about that. I can always come in and unload on her as much as I can. You know, sometimes you have to respect the confidentiality of the situation. But having someone outside of your team who you can talk to, unload on a little bit, get some ideas from, that's the best way I've found to keep yourself from bringing the whole team down.
This next question is about culture. I like this question because, as everyone knows, Toastmasters International is a global organization. Our clubs and members are in over 140 countries. Does your model work in different cultures worldwide? Would it apply, say, the same in Argentina as Saudi Arabia or Japan?
I want to say yes, but I haven't really done a lot of research outside the U.S. However, I have lived in other countries and gotten to know people from other cultures, and I really believe it does because I believe these are human needs. I don't think it matters where you were born or where you grew up. I think these are basic needs that humans have. Now, different cultures have a tendency to manifest that a little differently. Mm-hmm. For instance, I lived in Japan for a little while. In Japan, people are a lot more reserved than they are here. That doesn't mean that they don't have the same needs. It's just that they show them a little differently. So I think it does, but I have no research to prove that.
Well, Bob, I'm looking at the time here, and I can't believe that 30 minutes went by already.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you to everyone in the audience for attending this speaker showcase. If you have not already, please make sure to watch Bob Mason's education session, The Art of Not Motivating. Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Take care.